Beyond the fantastic Pelagos fix, the bulk of Tudor's main releases over the past few years have been from the wildly popular Black Bay collection. That is, until we saw just Tudor introduce a new contemporary Ranger as a follow-up to the existing historical Ranger, which was covertly terminated in 2020. This video will go over everything you need to know before purchasing the new Ranger as we examine it in greater detail. In order to make sense of this, it will be divided into parts. We'll start with a brief overview of the model family's history, then move on to what is still the same, before moving on to some updated dimensions, the bracelet and some differences. Finally, we'll discuss the in-house caliber, the MT5402, before deciding whether you should buy the watch or not, and who it is in the end. To learn everything about this watch, make sure to watch the video till the very end, and if you'd like to watch more of these videos, go subscribe our channel right now. Okay, let's jump into it. Let's begin with a very brief overview of the events leading up to the debut of this new Tudor Ranger. To start, it's crucial to note that the Tudor Ranger's history is a little murkier than that of some other models from the company. This is due to the fact that Tudor's original Ranger was a variation of the brand's regular Oyster Prince collection, housed in the same 34mm case, while the Oyster Prince dates back to 1952. The oldest Ranger-signed Tudor Oyster Prince timepieces date back to the early 1960s. And the Tudor claims that the model was first featured in a catalog in 1969. When discussing this model family, Tudor likes to reference the history of the British North Greenland expedition. But it's important to remember that the courageous members of that 1952 expedition wore standard Oyster Prince models rather than the genuine Ranger-signed watches, making the association perhaps a little bit of a stretch. The Ranger, however, served as Tudor's response to the Rolex Explorer in terms of its place in the lineup. In contrast to the 36mm case of the original Explorer, the 1953 coupling of billowing Arabic numerals at 12, 3, 6, and 9 with geometric indices everywhere featured a smaller Oyster Prince casing. Just as the snowflake handset has come to characterize Tudor's interpretation of the Submariner. A significant point of differentiation in design is the shovel hand, often known as the Ranger hand. Up until 1988, the original Ranger was manufactured with a range of date, no-date, automatic and manual configurations. After going inactive for a while, the Heritage Ranger returned to the fold in 2014, thanks to the Black Bay family's success when it was introduced a few years earlier. The first modern Ranger had a 41mm case, a smiling dial with a red seconds hand, and the widely used ETTA 28. The watch never really caught on, even though there were still some lovers of the historical Rangers. As a result, Twitter focused on creating more Black Bay variations before abandoning the Ranger in 2020. The new Ranger was unexpectedly released in July of this year with a few significant modifications that, in our opinion, make it a completely different beast from the previous model. Nevertheless, this discontinuance was a brief-lived, and after a quick regroup, we were surprised by it. Let's take a minute to review what genuinely remains the same about this watch, at least in terms of its fundamental visual style, before we discuss what is new. But before we move ahead, are you enjoying the video so far? Then spare a few seconds and go give it a like and share it with everyone as well. Do not forget to subscribe as well. The new Ranger resembles the vintage Ranger from a few years ago in appearance and features the same basic case design. Fixed steel bezel, 100 meters of water resistance, an available Oyster-style bracelet, and of course, the recognizable Ranger hour hand. The finishing approach for the case and bracelet is identical as well. Nevertheless, this new design leans heavily towards satin brushing practically everywhere. The revised dial ditches the Tudor Rose logo in favor of Tudor's contemporary shield, swaps the smiley text from the EDA-powered Tudors for the plain Ranger lettering, and chooses a red tip seconds hand rather than the entire red of the previous design. Although the lume is slightly tinted for a vintage appearance, it glows suitably but not particularly, as is typical for items from the Black Bay collection. The lume's color is also more golden green than the actual fox lume that we typically find on the market. Since this watch is positioned as a field-oriented timepiece, the lack of a date is a feature we do enjoy in this case. Overall, the look nevertheless feels extremely contemporary. It is still readable and consistent with the history of this model family, but it is now protected by a bracelet that is better and more durable. The movement of this new Ranger has undergone the second and possibly most significant alteration. Of course, a lot has changed for Tudor since the launch of that previous Ranger in 2014, and the company now provides an impressive range of manufactured calibers across the majority of its sport watch collections. The new Ranger featured here uses the MT5402, which is also housed within the Black Bay 58, despite not being known for its finishing and being concealed behind a screw-down case bag. The MT5402 is a significant upgrade and likely one of the strongest arguments for the new Ranger because it is currently the most affordable option at retail to enter these MT family movements, with prices starting at around $2,725 for the strap options, rising to $3,150 for the bracelet option, essentially remaining in line with the price compared to the previous non-powered version. Now, let's look at if you should buy this watch or not, and who this watch is for ultimately. Starting with some drawbacks, let's go over some broad advantages and cons related to this watch. When this product was out, people were talking about a few things, in particular quite a lot in our opinion. At first, we assumed that what people were saying simply referred to the watch's appearance as being somewhat simple or dull. We don't want to discount this watch to